morning and welcome to our proposal presentation by Vanessa Escobar, Chelsea Shoup, and Bailey Rockwell. Welcome to our introduction slide. Our research question is, will legal status dictate the amount of stress a family has? And our hypothesis states, if illegal immigrants will have more family stress. The theory that we chose to use for our research was family stress theory, or better known as the double ADCX model by McCubbin and Patterson, created in 1982. The model works in the way that A is the pileup, such as in our research, the immigrants struggling to come to the U.S. and they stress about money and language barriers and changes just in their communities. And it causes the person to feel stressed. And then B is like existing or new resources for coping with this pileup, such as finding financial assistance or working multiple low-paying jobs, but at the same time still not making enough money. If the resources are not enough to keep the family from entering the crisis state, then they enter into C, which they can look for new resources as needed to resolve the stressor. And then C is the precipitation, like how they view the kind of stress they're in. It can be either good stress or bad stress, but that's not really stated until you add that perception to the event or crisis. Our justification of the statement of the problem. On average, the nation's estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants pay 8% of their incomes in state and local tax every year, according to ITEP. Undocumented immigrants' state and local contributions could increase by up to $2.1 billion with a B under comprehensive immigration reform, boosting their effective tax rate to 8.6%, according to ITEP. Like all others living and working in the United States, undocumented immigrants are taxpayers too, and collectively contribute an estimated $11.74 billion to state and local efforts each year via a combination of sales and excise, personal income, and property taxes. This study considers whether illegal immigrants who often can only obtain low-income jobs in the U.S. could benefit our economic growth. Our policy. Undocumented immigrants make up $1.1 billion a year in personal income tax that comes out of their paychecks through state and federal taxes. They continue to help our lacking economy. ITEP. Although immigrants contribute to U.S. revenue growth, they are not allowed to partake in any government assistance. 40 states currently offer programs to help immigrants, but Kansas is not currently one of them. Most of these assistance options are offered primarily to the children, in hopes that the parents can get on their feet. These children are citizens, as they were born here in the U.S. If they meet the eligibility requirements, they have no waiting period. If they don't, they require the immigrant family to wait 6 months. Schroeder, 2015. Research demonstrates that immigrants do not accept help as much as the U.S.-born citizen does. It is possible that Kansas could stand to establish a policy to help these immigrants if they are employed and paying their taxes, meeting the eligibility requirements, Even if a waiting period was ultimately required, this policy change could alter the desire and motivation for undocumented immigrants to get a visa or become legalized. Literature Review by Vanessa Escobar. Article title: Legal Status and Wage Disparities for Mexican Immigrants by Matthew Hall, Emily Greenman, and George Farkas. The research question is, does legal status matter for the wages of low-skill Mexican immigrants? Farkas, 2010. The hypothesis is, high proportion of Mexican immigrants who are unauthorized explain the wage disadvantage. Farkas, 2010. Theories of labor market segmentation. Theory identified two types of jobs, one that offer stability, good working conditions, higher pay, and prospects for advancement, and those that tend to be low-paying jobs with few prospects for improvements in earning condition, higher pay, and prospects for advancement. Farkas et al., 2010, page 494. Literature review continued. Sample: high school educated men and women, workers aged 18 to 60, self-identified as either native-born, non-Latino, white, or Mexican descent, native or foreign-born. Instruments used: a survey from the Survey of Income and Program Participants, SIP, were used in this study to analyze monthly wage data from the years 1996 to 1999 and 2001 to 2003. SIP consisted of interviews and surveys asked every 4 months for 3 years. There were a total of 48 months of observation. SIP was key to this research because it also included information on immigration status. Procedure and methods. This research was a longitudinal study that used their hierarchical linear modeling techniques. This method allowed researchers to separate the wage data between Mexican immigrants, Mexican documented immigrants, Mexican undocumented immigrants, and Native Mexican Americans, and non-Latino whites. There is a representation in the model showing chronological month and individuals, as well as how many months had elapsed since the last interview. Other data represented in the linear model was education, experience, arrival to the United States, and the wage growth wage for each category. The results were, for men, there is a wage disparity between Mexican documented immigrants who have a 17% wage premium over their Mexican undocumented peers. For women, there is a 9% wage disparity between documented and undocumented Mexican immigrants. Over time, the wage seems to close to an 8 to 4%. However, the result was that wages for both undocumented and documented immigrants had a slow wage growth over time. Limitations of the study. Factors to make caution of are that there is not a clear study size sample. The study is based off of a survey, and only the ones that completed the survey were analyzed, which makes the study size small. The survey consisted of 12 interviews with 48 months of observation. Participants were not included if all interviews were not completed. Another limitation was this study took wage data from years 1996 to 1999, 2001, 2003. The publishing date was later. However, the data is outdated and does not reflect data for more recent years. By Vanessa Escobar. Article title: Stress and Alcohol, Cigarette and Marijuana Use Among Latino Adolescents in Families with Undocumented Immigrants, by Martha Zapta, Joseph Grivewska, Richard Cervantes, and Michael Merton. The hypothesis of this article that both hindered parental involvement, stress, family economic stress would be associated with lifetime use of alcohol, cigarette, and marijuana, while controlling for variables known to be risk and protective factors for adolescent substance use. Cervantes et al., 2015, page 477. Some of those risks and protective factors include things such as age, gender, familialism, parental control, negative peer affiliation. Cervantes et al., 2015. The theory used in this study was family stress theory. Because this article is measuring family economic stress to compare results in adolescents whose family has undocumented immigrants. The sample consisted of 102 families. Parents from these families had either both been immigrants from Mexico or Central America, or just one of them had to be. They also needed to have children between the ages of 10 and 18 years old. Data for the analysis of these families came from the FARO project, Broken Families Project, based out of the urban area of Oklahoma. The instruments used, as mentioned above, data for analysis was used from the FARO project. The FARO project studies the emotional and behavioral health in adolescents from immigrant families. This allowed the researchers to find the subjects that matched their study criteria. Other instruments used were an interviewer-administrated survey in the language of choice for parents. For adolescents, a self-administrated survey was used in the language of choice as well. A logistic regression model was used as well to show data. Review continues. The procedure for this research was collected non-randomly but represented parent-adolescent dyads from immigrant Latino families. Many families were identified through community outreach activities, through universities, and through personal contacts of the research team. There were also many community events that focused on recruiting families that fit the research criteria. Both parental and adolescent participants took part in a total of 4 surveys, which were all password protected and assigned random codes to enter the surveys. All participants were paid $20 for participation in the survey. To ensure all data was collected ethically, researchers had to go through a 3-hour training session about the FARO project. The first results showed that hindered parental involvement stress was associated with lifetime cigarette and marijuana use, but not with alcohol use. Some adolescents may be stressed that their parents are not involved because they have to work all the time or work odd hours to provide for the family. Although adolescents tend to need less parental involvement as they age, there seems to be a critical period where they want more parental involvement. Thus, the association with lifetime cigarette and marijuana use is made when there is a hindered parental involvement. Results from family economic stress turned out to be opposite of the hypothesis because there was no association with adolescent alcohol, cigarette, or marijuana use. The article highlights that this result might be due to high resilience with immigrant families. There was also a high correlation between hindered parental involvement stress and family economic stress that suggests that economic disadvantage is adding barriers to parental involvement, thus leading to the correlation to adolescent alcohol, cigarette, and marijuana use. Many of these families are undocumented, so they struggle more with finding jobs that allow them to provide parental involvement because either they need those jobs or those jobs do not have desirable hours. Limitations pointed out by the study were that there was not enough statistical data to test for the differences in hindered parental involvement, stress, and substance use between adolescents with undocumented parents. Limited statistical data is an issue because you cannot display a strong correlation or proof of the effects of hindered parental involvement stress if there isn't much statistical data in the first place. The article pointed out that samples containing 100 observations should be interpreted with caution, and their sample was 102. This article is the first known study to focus primarily on undocumented immigrants, so more research needs to be done on this subject. Literature Review by Chelsea Shue. Article title: Undocumented Migration to the United States and the Wages of Mexican Immigrants. The hypothesis for this article is the study is focused on how to explain a series of changes to the immigrants' wages. This decline is closely related to the rise in laws against immigration. Massey and Ginchich, 2014. The theory that was used was an economic theory, that if there was more immigrants, they would get paid less. It also states that after 1987, hiring illegal immigrants became illegal, so the wages they could pay became significantly less. The sample was divided into two parts: those immigrants who worked in the U.S. before 1987 and those who held a U.S. job in 1987 or later, effectively dividing the sample into a pre- and post-IRCA period. Massey and Ginchich, 2014. A highly significant coefficient for the difference between the two eras indicates that there indeed was an important structural shift in the process of wage determination before and after 1986. The instruments used in this study was they combined data on migrant earning and characteristics from the MMP with an annual estimate of the Mexican immigrant lacking documents. When the models contained only period indicators, they estimated and replicated that decline of the immigrants' wages. When they added in the individual characteristics, they found the wages were much lower for females than for males. That lower wages were predicted by their legalization status, low education, and lack of experience. The results show, although there was a breakdown suggested that maybe the decline in wages occurred to all Mexican immigrants, regardless of their legal status. Literature Review by Chelsea Shue. Article title: The Impact of Citizenship and Immigration Status, Socioeconomic Status, and Gender on the Mental Health Among Latino Adolescents. Hypothesis: Does citizenship and immigration status among Latino adolescents, including citizenship and immigration status of their mother and citizenship and immigration status of their father, impact Latino adolescent mental health? Research question. In this study, it is being searched that the citizenship and immigration status, SES, and gender are factors associated with Latino adolescents' mental health. It is hypothesized that non-citizens will have worse mental health than citizens. The sample was examined and the data collected from the 2009 California Health Interview Survey from CHISH 2011, which is a highly known collaborative project of the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, Center for Health Policy Services, and the 9 California Department of Health Services, and the Public Health Institute. Adults were randomly selected, age 19 and over, adolescents 12 to 17, and parents of children 0 to 11. Sampled adolescents provided 2 forms of consent to be eligible to participate in answering the interview questions. The instruments that were used were interviews that were conducted in 5 languages that the participants held. The results of the study found were gender and citizenship immigration status do have a significant correlation to mental health among Latino adolescent ages 12 to 17. The results found Latino adolescents that were U.S. citizens were less likely to feel everything is an effort in the past 30 days. On the contrary, Latino adolescents who are non-U.S. citizens were more likely than the U.S.-born citizens to feel everything is an extra effort. Article title: The Occupational Cost of Being Illegal in the United States, Legal Status, Job Hazards, and Compensating Differentials. The hypothesis is, after arriving to the U.S., how will the income streams of immigrant families change? The theory was economically based. It focused on the growth and change of income based on the higher hazardous jobs the immigrants chose to do. The sample was Mexican immigrants are central to justifying policy solutions that ultimately define which groups deserve to benefit from particular policies and which groups do not. They had 2 groups, illegal undocumented immigrants and legal documented immigrants, and they observed them to see if either set chose higher hazardous jobs for the pay or were more cautious due to fears of injury and having stress of medical bills. Procedures. The data sources given were the congressional records. Newton argued that in the 1990s, immigration reform debates relied on narratives that deal with taxpayers and immigrants, constructions of immigrants as criminals and or freeloaders were prevalent, and no counter-narratives were present to contest those constructions. Lena Newton, 2008. Article title: Illegal Alien or Immigrant, the Politics of Immigration Reform. The hypothesis: are undocumented immigrant workers concentrated in the most dangerous, hazardous, and otherwise unappealing jobs in the U.S.? The theory: illegal immigrants that are in the workforce in the U.S. participated in the study. Yoshikaya's study, which features interviews with undocumented parents, and found that undocumented workers' fear of deportation can leave them stuck in jobs with burdensome working conditions that often pay less than the minimum wage. Hall and Greenman, 2015. Using the data from 2004 and 2008 panels of survey of income and program participation, we can input legal status for Mexican and Central American immigrants and link their occupations to Bureau of Labor and Statistics, data on occupational fatalities, and occupational hazard data from the U.S. Department of Labor to explore racial and legal status differentials on several specific measures of occupation. Hall and Greenman, 2015. Findings. Mixed evidence for the role of legal status on occupational danger was found. Occupational cost of being illegal. The results showed that in comparison with Native workers and legal Mexican immigrants, low-scale undocumented Mexicans, particularly men, have the highest level of occupational hazard on 3 of the 7 dimensions of risk that were assessed, including work characterized by physical strain, exposure of heights, and repetitive motion. Methods. Procedure continued. The design of the study will be a longitudinal panel study, as it is a survey that will be administered to the same participants over the course of 48 months and checking in every 4 months for any changes in the participants' answers. The specific times to administer the survey were chosen by the following: a SIP method of data collection as a model. In the SIP survey, they divided their samples into subsamples of about the same size. They call these subgroups rotation groups. One rotation group is interviewed each month. During that interview, information is gathered from the 4 previous months, called reference months. Therefore, each rotation group is interviewed about the prior 4 months. Our interviews will be done using the same method, only with 3 subgroups: illegal immigrants, legal immigrants, and native-born citizens, being interviewed every 4 months for a total of 48 months. There will be 3 comparison groups in this study. Those comparison groups will consist of illegal immigrants, and native-born citizens. The independent variables will be the legal and the illegal immigrants and native-born citizens. The dependent variable will be the amount of stress each independent variable has. The research will begin with a draft IRB application in May of 2019 and will submit the IRB application by June 2019. Research will be conducted in July of 2019 with the first wave of researchers administering the survey to each household. The researchers will then return 4 months later, November of 2019, to administer a second round of surveys to the same participants. The researchers will continue to follow those same individuals every 4 months for the 48 months until the survey is complete in June of 2023. Methods. Participants. Our participant samples will be residents of the state of California because, according to the Migration Policy Institute, California has 3,059,000 unauthorized populations, which is the highest amount compared to other states. Therefore, according to a sample size calculator from SurveyMonkey.com, a sample of 385 will be needed to give us a confidence level of 95% and a margin of error of 5%. SurveyMonkey. To participate in the survey, the participants must be at least 18 years old. and not past retirement age, 64 years old. Participants may be of any gender. Legal status will not matter. Participants' education level will not be a qualifying factor. To collect participants for the survey, researchers will use the snowball sampling method, a common non-probability sampling method. This method will be used because the population the researchers are attempting to survey may be hard to reach since the study is focused on illegal immigrants and it is difficult to find a database that holds addresses of illegal demographics. Researchers will look for initial participants out in the streets of California to agree to take the study, and from there ask the participants to refer 3 friends each with a goal of having each participant refer at least one legal or illegal immigrant and 1 native-born citizen. Researchers will pay each participant $5 per friend referred and $10 if each participant brings 3 different participants with different citizenship statuses, as an incentive to find those different kinds of people for the purpose of our study. A questionnaire using a multi-item index will be used to collect data from each participant. This scale will record responses with numerical values representing an answer. Those numerical numbers range from 1 to 5, with 1 being almost always to 5 being never. Questions will be grouped based on demographics, employment and wage satisfaction, federal assistance, and family stress based on employment and wage. Many questions on demographics and job satisfaction were measured by using the questions from the administrated questionnaire, found in Appendix B. Research related to the topic of economic impacts related to undocumented immigration is crucial due to common knowledge that it is difficult for illegal immigrants to find jobs that pay enough to support themselves and their families. Therefore, a disruption is anticipated to be found based on the family stress theory. This study will consider the impact of low wages and lack of job growth and effects of family dynamic in illegal immigrant families. There are many issues revolving around illegal immigrants. Through this study, we hope to increase the understanding of how to help a family dynamic.